that they want us to launch, right? Oh, right. So what are the sort of things that you can do which are low effort but could have a high impact in your value proposition, right? Low effort, high impact, right? So this is what we call the implement quadrant, right? If there's high effort and high impact, there's lots of things. This is what technologists love, this quadrant, right? Now, I'm an engineer, right? So I should put that on the table. So I love technology. But this is what we challenge, right? Or maybe consider, okay? This here, high effort, low impact, kill. This is possible. There's your peak matrix. Very simple process, right? Very, very simple. When we first conducted the peak matrix without training, and we involved our engineers, I have a team of about 60 engineers in my group, right? You should have seen the number of ideas that came through here, because they were sexy. You know, engineers, ooh, what, am I going to go and work on these things? I didn't do a 4-year degree to, you know, come up with some sort of new little jig where you're going to put the implant. And guess what? That jig in itself was so bloody revolutionary that it cut down lead time for the implant from 2 weeks to 7 hours. Now, if I'm an engineer and I get the opportunity to have that impact, and as a result of that enable people to hear, right, I'd be so ecstatic, right? I'd be so happy. But that requires some coaching. That requires a transformation role in the leadership team, right? And it's to try to get people to work more and more on this quadrant. So what we do in the last minute is basically just run sessions every time we have a problem or we acknowledge an opportunity. And we have these things printed in this nice wheelie sort of butcher paper stands like the ones you see here, but it's really, marketing helped us with the branding of it. So it looks really pretty, and there's many of them lying around. So every time someone has a problem, all they do is wheel one of these things out. They've got little pockets for post-it notes, and they put them in there. And within 5 minutes, you got the whole thing plastered like a piñata. And then you take these ones here and you put them through your normal day-to-day management processes that get things done. Many of those ideas are now being considered for patents. Many of those ideas are now being considered for potential transformations all the way back to the product design process. So let's not make it much more than what it really needs to do, and let's give this little incremental innovation some credit, because it really is the foundation for any of the major innovations that are happening in the world nowadays. So that's my take on it, and that's 10 minutes. So thank you.
Okay, we were going to have a 15-minute discussion between the panel members, but because of our time constraints, we're going to just open it up to Q&A right now. I was, however, as Rod was speaking, I was reminded of a very nice example of innovation in the I segment here, which I saw in a Chinese company. I'm speaking about Chinese companies. This was a company that was selling products that were essentially fast-moving consumer goods. They were packed into cartons, and occasionally the carton would be empty, the packing machinery didn't work, and they wanted to know how to deal with this problem. And so they engaged a consultant. He came up with a plan that involved weighing the cartons as they sped down the assembly line, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and it was going to cost about $250,000 to implement. The CEO got a couple of his younger engineers and said, "You've got a week to come up with a better solution. If you don't get one, you're fired." And these guys, within a week, came up with a solution. They installed a very large fan on the assembly line, and if a carton was empty, it just got blown off the line. Very simple solution, and saved the company $250,000 and also their jobs. So let's open up now to Q&A. Please just raise a question, any question or comment you have. We have 15 minutes, so let's try to be innovative about it. Who would like to go first? Yes, sir.
So I have two questions, one from business point of view and the other one from the consumer behavior. From business point of view, there was a talk right before your talk in the supply chain track which is about the complexity of the supply chain. And the talk was about when you introduce more products, so you increase the complexity of the system and you might impact negatively on the price index. So I was wondering how you talking about introducing different kind of products and increasing the choice, is it good or not? And that's the first question. The second question is about the consumer behavior. If you go to supermarket these days, you can see the trends. You can see the health food section in Woolworths and Coles is increasing in size. And people are thinking about the health more. And you can see Aldi is introducing organic products, these things. And Coca-Cola, in terms of sugar, kind of is not considered as a health food.
So what's the question related to that?
So how would you challenge this? Because this trend is happening in terms of consumer behavior, choosing more healthy foods.
So in terms of the first, it's a really important question for us. You get to a point, I guess, in the supply chain where it just doesn't make economic sense to continue proliferating your SKUs, your stock keeping units, for those who are familiar with the term. So for us, we are almost a bit like the Donald Trump of policy. Any new policy, you need to have two policies or three policies out. So a bit like that. So we are absolutely very mindful to ensure that we're not proliferating our SKU count. On the other hand, we have put the challenge back to supply chains to say, look, this is a new norm for us. We have a repetiristic consumer out there. We need to have beverages that addresses a number of different occasions, not just traditional occasion like Coke. You need to come to us with a solution on that. So that's a combination of things, including acquisition of smaller players to actually have a much more nimble, separate supply chain structure. On your second point, in terms of health, your question there, it is, so in terms of our traditional portfolio, so Coca-Cola Classic, we've launched Coke No Sugar recently, which is a zero sugar product with a profile that's very, very similar to the classic Coke, minus the sugar. We also has a lot of very exciting innovations around stevia and the likes of stevia, where it is effectively a healthier alternative to sugarcane sugar, but it has the same profile, but zero calories or negative bad elements. So there's a huge amount of innovation in that space, certainly at Coke, to address that issue. But beyond Coke, outside of that, we have products, probably the healthiest product you could drink, which is Mount Franklin, but outside of that as well. So your functional healthy beverages is a huge amount of innovation that we're excited about and we bring into the market to address that. Absolutely.
Thank you, Jacques. Another question? Yes, sir.
Can I pick up a comment made by Leonard, which may be a very good answer? As you automate, as you get AI in, your ability to get feedback from the field decreases, and there's no one out there doing it because it's automated, and that may impact your ability to innovate. How do you address this?
Is this a question for me?
Well, for you and everybody, yeah, because you brought this up.
Right.
But I think it's a more generic question. As you automate, you make it much more difficult to get information about how things are done in the field, and therefore make it much more difficult to get bottom-up innovation.
It depends how you automate. So we have, talking about more disruptive innovations, an Industry 4.0 program, and I think you made some references to it. So the way the system works now, if you think about the cochlear implants, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be answering your question, but let me try for a second. The implant is now able to be hooked up via internet and Bluetooth so that we can monitor the performance of the implant. And as a result of that, understand the real-time capability and how it is being used, right? And so if we understand that, then we can actually eventually, in response to that feedback, be able to develop implants that cater for the in-use difficulties or the opportunities that we see. But I'm not sure if that's where you were going with the question.
Also, the mining, I think this came up.
Look, that's a very good question. Thank you for that. I do actually get asked that question regularly, believe it or not. I think it's the way it is managed. So in terms of innovation with AI, we use that now. So in my current field, so for example, when we update all the commodities, so we look after 50,000 resource projects and we update with AI, The thing is how you use AI to monitor. So on the ground, yes, we need the people in the field to be there. But the best advantage about AI is you get more information. And for me personally, you actually innovate faster. So it's more of but then at the same side, if you solely rely on AI, which a lot of companies do, then yes, you do lose that interface and that real experience. So with the best truck, AHS, the program is actually called Shelley. So when we did all the programming, we actually, you know, like Lord of the Rings, and you have all the sensors, and they do the Gollum, and they do the 3D mapping. So we actually recorded the best truck driver, essentially, to do the underground work, the underlying work for the AI technology for the trucks. But we're continually using that. But as analysts or engineers or in finance, you're analysing that, you're able to make decisions much quickly and interpolate. But again, not all companies do that, and that's why, personally, if I compare our biggest competitor, BHP Billiton, who also do AHS, that's why Rio Tinto is probably, to be honest, 5 years ahead in that space. So, for example, the autonomous drilling, or their biggest competitors are nowhere near that technology, and it's because they're just solely relying on AI without questioning it. It's like anything, Phil.
I think it's a very good question because it does raise this issue of, if the machine is making the decisions, is the surrounding information that humans pick up in a more intuitive way just being lost? And I guess it depends to some extent on how you design your system. I mean, for example, 7-Eleven Japan has a very good record of profitability, and it uses information technology to support everything it does. And so it's able to replenish its stores 3 times a day in Japan, all over the country. And they're changing the products that are held in the stores based on what consumers are actually using and buying at different times in the day. And they do a lot of correlations that human beings wouldn't be able to do very quickly. For example, they discovered that there seemed to be a correlation between the sales of beer and the sales of pantyhose. And they knew that men tended to buy beer, so the question was, are men now going in for pantyhose? But no, the answer was, when they did a bit further research, that men would come in the evening, buy some beer for themselves, and then remember their wife had asked them